Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. It's been quite a break, busy work schedule, a lot of stuff going on. I think it's been since the Super Bowl, Tom Castleman, but
hmm
we do have another massive sporting event coming up. Perhaps besides the Super Bowl, arguably maybe as a entire event, the biggest we see in the country, the NCAA March Madness tournament. I know we did a pretty thorough analysis last year. We had more time back then. We did the men's and women's side. We're going to keep the show fairly brief. It's about 3 hours after the brackets are released, about 8:40 right now on a Sunday night. We'll keep it concise. We'll talk about the Cinderella teams. We'll talk about potential Final Four teams. We'll talk about the
hmm
stars of the tournament, what conferences will shine, and of course, ultimately, who's going to win the thing? It's called March Madness for a reason. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. It is the most wonderful time of the year. Just plenty of
Mizzou.
basketball to be played. Harkening back, of course, to our college days at the University of Missouri, we had a pretty good team when we were there. It got as high as a two seed. That was pretty much the pinnacle of that was getting the two seed. Not much success after that point when it actually came time uh,
Hmm.
put the ball on the hard court. But we have got a really interesting bracket this year. This is a year where there's I think not as much parity per se because there's going to be a lot of familiar schools. Looking at a conference like the SEC breaking a record for the number of schools getting a bid to the tournament. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do. Is it kind of a shotgun approach? How many teams are going to advance out of that particular conference? But let's begin with something that everybody loves to talk about, even if it doesn't necessarily win or lose a bracket per se. The first thing that everybody does when they get their bracket, not saying it's the right thing to do, but they look at those 512s, those 611s, those 710s. They go, is there perhaps a 13 over a 4 like Yale over Auburn last year? Is there some sort of upset pick that I can put in there so that whether I'm in the social media chat gathering around the proverbial water cooler at work, I can put a feather in my cap that I picked a double digit seed that nobody else had any faith in? So, Common, let's start out with the Cinderella team. Who do you like as a potential double digit seed to make it to the Sweet 16? And I want to very briefly do the quick caveat of, being so close to the actual selection Sunday itself. There's a little bit of digging to do into this. So this is a very much a first blush kind of
Yes.
a read on the bracket, but in the research I've been doing over the past few hours with all this information at our fingertips, I think I have a couple that could be pretty intriguing that
Hmm.
for advancing pretty far. So, what's maybe one, two, three teams, however many you want to go on who you like to advance, perhaps?
Yeah, so first off, almost every year there's a double digit seed in the Sweet 16. It's become like it's far more likely that it's going to happen than it won't. I do have just a quick little bracket advice. I would say
hmm
pick one or two, don't pick too many, because I've been on that side where I've tried to look like the genius where I pick like, four, five, six upsets, and it's the other four, five, six upsets as opposed to the ones that I
Always.
picked. So don't get too trigger happy. We know upsets will happen, but it's kind of hard if you're gonna try to pick all of them that'll happen. Uh, I'm going very gut based this year. Watched a little bit less college hoops than normal. And it technically, Tom, truthfully, past tournament experiences should not be an indicator of current
hmm
tournament happenings. But I'm going with my gut, and that's going to be Akron, number 13 seed, knocking off number 4,
Hmm.
Arizona. We have seen Arizona struggle mightily in the NCAA tournament over the last 15, 20 years. They had DeAndre Ayton one year as a high seed, lost early. Caleb Love is a superstar player for Arizona. Caleb Love is kind of like a Russell Westbrook and an Allen Iverson. And I want to say by that, a very poor man's Russell Westbrook and Allen Iverson. That is, he's a very up and down shooter. There's some days where he might get on fire, other days we could go 0 for 10, 0 for 11, 1 for 11, 1 for 12. So knowing Arizona's track record, I'm just gonna say I'm sorry if you're an Arizona fan. That is my one that I'm looking at. Uh, just a couple, just brief look through the Akron roster. And I did, by the way, watch Arizona earlier this year once. And of course, the one game I watched, they did not look very good. So leave it at that. But Akron's four leading scorers are all guards, Tom. Tournaments are dominated by guard play. So if your top four guys are all guards who have the option to get hot at any moment, definitely got my eyes on Akron as a 13 seed, making some noise. Also, this is not a traditional, lower, you know, a bad team necessarily, a low seed. They're not a 13, they're not an 11, they're not a 12. But Arkansas is a 10 seed. Intrigues me a little bit. They're coming out of the SEC, the record 14 SEC teams making the tournament. A lower ranked SEC team. They've played the tough competition, certainly. We know Coach Cal hasn't had as much tournament success in recent years, or else he'd still be coaching Kentucky, but he's had a lot of tournament success in the past. So he's been there, done that. Arkansas also low key. I'm not saying they're making a Final Four, but how many times have we seen a sneaky, like a 7, a 10,
Hmm.
8, 9, 6, 11, that type of Arkansas team that makes it to the Elite Eight, to the Sweet 16? They're just a proven track record of Arkansas making these runs, a proven track record from Coach Cal. You look at some of the lower seeds who can make a run. Look at teams that play in good conferences, and look at teams that are well coached. I mean, March Madness is obviously very important when it comes to coaches. So
Hmm.
give me Akron, give me Arkansas. I know Akron's more of a traditional Cinderella 13 seed, lower conference. Arkansas, a little bit less of a traditional team, but they're still technically a double digit seed. They do technically still fit the question that we're posing here.
Yeah, I think those are some great picks. I especially like a little side wager that has been made. Arkansas and Kansas, whoever wins the game for a day, the other state has to change the pronunciation of their name. I completely made that up, but I think
Arkansas.
that'd be a
It is, by
phenomenal
the way,
side
Tom,
wager.
fun side fact. It is
Uh-huh.
illegal to say Arkansas in Arkansas. It's an actual state law. I learned it from my fifth grade teacher. It is
Hmm.
actually illegal to do so, which is, by the way, I did actually have this written down. I forgot to mention it. That's the other reason why I'm picking Arkansas, because
Hmm.
Kansas has been very, very spotty this year. They have not looked very good. They probably shouldn't even be a 7 seed, to be
Mm.
honest with. It's called being the University of Kansas. But I mean, they were ranked like, was it number one preseason? They were ranked number one early in the
Yep.
season. If we base it off the last like 2 months of play, they're probably realistically the 10 seed, not the 7 seed in that
Hmm.
matchup. So I do like Arkansas. They would play Kansas in the next round, assuming, actually they do play each other right away. I'm sorry. So I like Arkansas in that matchup. Exactly.
Wonderful, and I'm really liking that on this topic in particular. We're going to have some difference because not that I'm saying I disagree, but I just had some different teams I was highlighting, which means that this is going to be a really fun tournament for watching some of these teams be potential upset teams. I mean, UC San Diego, if you want to go with a more classic
12 seed.
5-12 upset against the Michigan Wolverines. The Wolverines, of course, winning the Big Ten championship, but
Yeah, I'm not going
winning
that one.
winning your championship in tournament form doesn't necessarily mean that you're on a big enough of a roll or have a momentum shift that you're going to be carrying that one into the tournament. UC San Diego could be a fun watch, a 30 win team, I believe, out of the Big West. And you look at Michigan. I mean, one stat that I like to look at when I'm pulling up those Ken
Uh-oh.
Palm rankings is looking
Uh-oh.
at the luck ranking,
Oh
and
boy.
Michigan at 41, one of the luckier teams, which means they're winning more than their fair share of close games. So,
They won by one, I
in
think was it on Saturday in the Big Ten semis, virtual buzzer
Mhm.
beater.
Yeah, I mean
They're clutch in
that's
March though,
variance.
Tom. Could
That's
go either
variance.
way.
You say clutch, I say variance in a bigger picture scheme. Another maybe not necessarily small school, but Colorado State has a really, really good draw against a Memphis team that isn't particularly strong. So I would say that, in order to make it to the Sweet 16, you first got to make it to the round of 32. Colorado State has a very good chance, I think, of doing that. And then this isn't going to be a Cinderella team by any stretch of the imagination, but it feels like every year there is a play-in team that just goes on an absolute run. And I was kind of surprised because you typically go pretty big for this program, Common.
UNC.
The UNC Tar Heels, they have a playing game against the San Diego State Aztecs. I think UNC, that was a bubble team that was just kind of having a weird year and a down year for the ACC, but they still have RJ Davis as an experienced player for them. I could
Hmm.
really easily see them winning not just that playing game, but then you're going up against the 6 seed Ole Miss. Ole Miss not necessarily a strong team this year, a little bit undersized coming out of the SEC, and then you go up against a potential 3 seed in Iowa State. Iowa State missing one of their key players, Keyshawn Gilbert out pretty much for the tournament for Iowa State. He's missed the past 7, 8 games, something like that, for the Cyclones. But still, a really important piece for that team that is out. So I can see a path forward for UNC to kind of get on a roll. They're coming into the tournament with a game underneath their belt if they beat San Diego State. That Ole Miss is going to be coming in colder than that team. So it's really easy to see a narrative for that UNC Tar Heels team to be a Cinderella advancing far. But the question
Yeah.
is aimed at a
That,
double-digit seed, so
that's
that's where I'm going.
I will say they did well against Duke. I know Cooper Flag didn't play,
Hmm.
but that was a one possession game. They were down big, rallied in the second half. I mean, had they not rallied in the second half, they wouldn't be in this tournament to begin with. So they just
Sure.
snuck in. They were really on the bubble because I
Oh
think
yeah.
they could have easily not been in this tournament. But that not only does that happen a lot, the playing game, it happens a lot of times where a team that barely makes the tournament does make a run. UNC, you kind of talking me into that one, Tom. Just one other one, again,
Hmm.
more of a feel for it,
Sure.
but I think we've seen, I hate to say this, against our Mizzou Tigers. I think it was a couple years ago. Princeton was a
Hmm.
15 seed out of the Ivy League. Yale is a 13 seed. I like the SEC. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's kind of hard not to see like an Ivy League school there. You know, they're going to have the smarts to play, right, Tom? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, whatever
Oh
that
yeah.
means. So Yale would be another one just to take like a little peek at it. And also VCU, again, BYU.
Hmm.
You know, VCU is the 11 seed. Could be one you keep your eyes on. Uh, this one feels weird. Again, Vanderbilt is a 10 seed against St. Mary's. St. Mary's actually lost their conference tournament championship. Traditionally, a slow down team, play a
Hmm.
very slow, boring style. Vandy coming out of the SEC's got a monster year. Could be, again, very mini upset, but 10
Sure. Yeah.
seed could be intriguing as well there.
Indeed. So there's any number of upsets from which to choose. The key, like you said, Common, not to go overboard on those, as law of averages would say the higher seed is more likely to win. But if you take maybe take these as a couple pieces of advice, do a little extra homework on a couple of teams, you might find somebody that strikes your fancy as that little upset pick that might be the difference for you in the early stages of the tournament. And I mean, the tournament, we're talking about these upset teams, and with a lot of these upset teams, stars are born. So we'll talk about some of the stars going into the tournament. The very established players, some of them new to the scene, such as a potential Wooden Award winner coming out of Duke, and another potential Wooden Award winner out of Auburn, a little bit more established. Just a couple of starts. I'm talking, of course, Cooper Flag from the Duke Blue Devils, where missed a portion of the ACC tournament with an ankle injury, but indications, John Scherer has not ruled him out for the NCAA tournament. So this feels like maybe he sits the first game against the 16 seed. Duke is still a very, very talented team. But everybody's eyes are going to be on Cooper Flag. He's the presumptuous #1 overall draft pick for the NBA this year. So all eyes will be on him. And of course, you don't get a bigger star in the game than a potential Wooden Award winner. And Johnny Broome out of Auburn has been, kind of neck and neck with Cooper Flag throughout the season. So that's a couple of big men that are big stars on this stage, really have an opportunity to impact the game offensively, defensively. Both of them are very, very strong defensive players as well. So, and of course, playing for 1 seeds, just to wrap up this little mini run that I'm on here, we have an opportunity to see them play for multiple games Common, who are you looking at as some potential other stars that maybe might be emerging if you're going a little bit of a deeper cut, or maybe just some bigger names that we should be keeping an eye on for more established programs?
Yeah, so first off, real quick, I do have those two written down as well.
Hmm.
Cooper Flag, I think it's like minus 165 for National Player of the
Something
Year.
like that,
I
yeah.
think I think it's actually pronounced Janai Broom. He's like plus 125.
Oh,
But Broom's an absolute beast. 19 points, 11 rebounds. The lefty, really good under the rim.
hmm
Cooper Flag does a little bit of everything. I'm trying to think of like what like his comparison would be because he's like not necessarily amazing at anything, but he's very, very good at everything. I'm trying to think of like an NBA comp, like a guy that's just
Hmm.
like very good at everything. Maybe like what's up, a guy that I felt is a little overrated, but he's come on of late. Maybe like a Jason Tatum. He's not great at a single thing, but he's pretty athletic. He's a pretty
hmm
good shooter, pretty good scorer, but he's not like, a
Pretty good
knockdown shooter.
defender.
He's a good passer, but
Yeah.
he's not an amazing passer. I mean, Jason Tatum's a top 10 player in the game. So that's
hmm
a pretty good compliment. But that's kind of, someone I'm thinking of that does just a little bit of everything, but isn't necessarily considered the best passer, not considered the best shooter,
hmm
not considered the best scorer, but does like literally everything. That's him. He does everything. He can score down low. He can shoot from the outside. He's strong. He's athletic. Just a jack of all trades, Cooper Flag. I have a couple other guys that are written down. I mean, Walter Clayton Jr. playing some of the best basketball in the country right now. That's Florida's leading scorer, 22 points in the SEC championship game. He's a very solid shooter, a guy that can get hot. Florida is probably playing the best ball right now. They're a one seed as well. Like you said, they've won 12 of 13. They won the SEC championship in the conference tournament. The best conference, bar none, SEC. We'll talk about that
hmm
in the next segment. I think actually flip segments, but that's no problem. It works for me. But yeah, to win the SEC championship and to be the star in the big game, he's definitely one I look at. Then I look at the other SEC team I think that could make a run. Chaz Lanier for Tennessee, terrific scorer, terrific player, and maybe a little bit. I don't want to use the word under the radar because I think he is one of the more well-known college players in the game, but I think he dominates the game in a different way. Zakai Ziegler, very experienced
hmm
point guard for Tennessee, getting about 7 assists a game. He can score. He might score 10, 12 points. He's not going to score 30 points in a tournament game, but he might get you 8, 9, 10 assists, which is just as effective. You put up 10 and 10, that's pretty good. That's better than putting up 20 and 2. So he's a guy I look at for sure, Zakai Ziegler. But I mean, Duke has a really good team besides Cooper Flag. I think
hmm
Florida, I look at Tennessee, I look at Auburn. I mean, Chad Baker Mazzara for Auburn's also a really good number two option there behind Broom. So I'm with you. I'm going to go with the teams that I think will go far. I could have easily mentioned Sears out of Alabama. He's a guy
He's
that
on my
was
list,
massive
yeah.
in last year's tournament, had a recent game winner, lefty, outside shooter. You know how important guards are in the tournament.
hmm
RJ Davis, you want to go a little bit more kind of out of nowhere if UNC does make that run, for example. So there's plenty of guys that, we're kind of giving you guys the big names, but very well this tournament is all about discovering that superstar we didn't know. I didn't write this down and I'm blanking off the top of my head, but the kid
hmm
last year that made all those threes against Kentucky, Jack something, I could be wrong. Uh, I'm blanking on his name.
Yes, yeah.
But you know who I'm
I know who
talking
you're
about.
talking
He made
about.
like
Yeah,
seven threes
strong
against
jaw,
Kentucky. Uh,
strong jaw.
yes, and I know obviously Steph Curry. I actually discovered Curry earlier because I watched him against UNC in the regular season. But I think Steph Curry was the prime example of a massive star that the vast majority of the country had no clue who he was before the NCAA tournament. You watch the NCAA tournament, it's the birth of one of the 10 greatest players to ever play the game. I'm not saying we'll get a Steph Curry in this tournament,
hmm
but there could be some fun little surprises, some guys that we haven't mentioned that will come absolutely out of nowhere, Tom.
Jack Golke, by the way, look that
That's
one
it.
up.
Hey,
And that was
Did I say Jack?
you did say Jack,
I was
yeah.
right.
He was out of
Jack.
Oakland. Oakland was the team,
That's
but
right.
not Oakland, California. It was Oakland, Michigan, actually. So,
Yes, weird
um,
enough. Like there's a
yeah,
Paris, Missouri.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a couple other stars. You know, plays for Kansas, but he's been around college basketball for a while now.
Hunter
Hunter
Dickinson.
Dickinson, of
Sure.
course, is big man, big name. JT Toppin for Texas Tech moving. I think he transferred from New Mexico, I want to say, and he's been a big reason that the Red Raiders are a 3 seed and have had a really strong season. And then if you want to feel a little bit old common, you remember Jason Richardson of the Golden State Warriors
My former Michigan State player in
and for
college.
Michigan State took him to the 2000
They won.
title that year.
They
His son
won.
Jace Richardson is now playing
Oh.
for Michigan State and has been a big reason why they are a 2 seed in this
Hmm.
year's tournament. So that's another big name with some NBA bona fides, NBA bloodlines there. That's I remember as a kid being like, "Oh yeah, Jason Richardson, this great scoring guard, for the era
Dunker.
and all that."
Dunk
Really,
contest
really
champion.
fun dunker as well. Now it's like, oh, his son.
It's
How
called genetics.
wonderful.
It's in the genes, Tom.
Oh yeah, and it's in the passages of time. You're right. I did flip the topics around.
That's
I was
okay.
excited to talk about some of the best players. We got to talk about the best conference, and it's typically kind of been bouncing around a little bit. Is it Big Ten? The old Big East for a while was the really great conference. Big 12 has been
ACC's
with
had its
with
time.
ACC's it
Way
has
back
has
in the day,
time.
especially. Not
Big
this year, though.
12.
ACC was bad this year.
Yeah, very top heavy. Big 12, Kansas, is almost always coming out of the Big 12. And, Baylor winning a title a couple of years back. But this has been the year of the SEC, as I mentioned at the top of the show.
SEC.
13 bids, basically,
I
if you're
think,
in
was it
the
13 or
SEC.
14, I think.
Is it up to 14?
I think it was 14, and
I may have miscounted on that one.
I think the one that Lenardi might have gotten one wrong. It might have been an SEC team. 'Cause you know how he always gets them all or
Mhm.
-1? I read 14 right before I looked.
You very well could, but yeah, it's either way, it's a record. I believe the previous high was 11 teams
I'm
getting a
looking it up
bid.
on my phone right
So
now just to clarify, but keep going.
it's one of those things where there's a lot of different indicators of tournament success. I mean, obviously, you want to have your conference cut down the nets at the end of the entire tournament, but
14, by
this
the
still
way.
it is
Previous record was
14.
Big East with 11 in
Yeah,
2011.
that is absolutely bananas, and I think it's been pretty well earned for the SEC. I mean, the ACC's been down, so it's kind of difficult to look at the SEC ACC challenge and say, okay, the fact that only Duke and Clemson picked up wins means that the SEC is a phenomenal conference, but they've been doing well against every other big conference. And really, it's only been in SEC play that all of these teams are just absolutely hammering on each other. I mean, if you look at something like a very mainstream now Ken Pom ranking, I mean, you've got Florida's in there, Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, all within the top 10, really, top like
Well, they have
six
they have
right
three
there.
1 seeds and a 2 seed, I believe.
It's
And you want to
it's
talk about out of
absolutely bananas.
conferences? I know they've
Hmm.
slipped, but Mizzou knocked off Kansas this year, back when KU was #1. Go
Yeah,
Tigers, baby.
yeah, and Mizzou, a 6 seed, is the 15th ranked team in Ken Pomeroy's ranking. So there is a lot of talent, a lot of depth to this conference, and that's why I think that with this tournament, the SEC is going to do really well
Hmm.
for themselves. I think that sure, it's a little bit of a spread approach with this many teams. It's hard for all of them to fall flat on their faces, but we have seen the Big Ten be the most dominant team or the most populous team conference in the tournament.
And
And
struggle.
they've had multiple times where they're not even
Hmm.
getting out of the first weekend. Some notable years where, Purdue has fallen short. Sometimes Michigan State, has fallen short a couple years back against Middle Tennessee. They were a really popular team to win it all, and they fell short.
Denzel
Uh,
Valentine.
it kind of feels like there's not with as many top teams that they have, I don't really feel like any of them are super vulnerable to early exits. I think that these are all teams that should be staying into the tournament into the second weekend. So it's kind of difficult for me to look and see like there's any other conference that um, is going to have the same level of staying power that the SEC has. I think that there's going to be quite a bit of advancement from this conference.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you 100%. If I had to pick one that's most likely to get upset, it's actually our Mizzou Tigers because they don't play
Really?
defense, but they
This is
can shoot
true.
lights out. They can score. Mizzou's a perfect example of a team that could go all the way to the Final Four or lose in the first round. But like you mentioned, there's too many good teams. One or two will get upset, invariably with 14 teams. But I
Mhm.
think of it, I look at like what are the most likely teams to win. I mentioned three one seeds and a two. It's actually two one seeds, two seeds. Did
Mm.
misspoke. Tennessee's a two, Bama's a two, then Florida and Auburn are both ones. But I look at all four of those teams. I mean, I know Houston's a good team, but come on. If Bama or Tennessee played in the Big 12, they'd be a one seed as well. So I
Yeah.
actually think four of the top five teams in the country, which, going into the tournament weekend, I believe it was, I think Auburn, Florida, and Bama, I think, are all in the top five right now in the rankings, and Tennessee is just outside the top five. And then obviously they made it all the way to the SEC title game. So, yeah, I think it's the best conference. I think they have so many good teams. They have guys that have been there though, like Janai Broom, Ziegler. They have some guys that have experience. And you mentioned like a team like Auburn who got upset recently. We
Mhm.
could have the same thing as the Virginia effect, where Virginia loses
Sure.
as a one seed, then they win the national championship. You look at Mizzou's a six seed. Mizzou beat Florida. Mizzou beat Alabama this year. They're a six seed. So that shows you how much talent there is in the SEC conference. So this is absolutely the best conference in this tournament. I think they have top to bottom the most good teams. I will say the Big Ten I can see doing pretty well as well. I
Mhm.
do like Tom Izzo. Michigan State is always intriguing with Tom Izzo. They always seem to make a run. Michigan, Wisconsin are good basketball teams. I would maybe look out for the Big Ten, but I do think the SEC stands and stands alone. We're so used to the SEC being the best conference in college football, which I still think it
Mhm.
is, but I think it's taken a half step back the last year or two. Doesn't mean that it won't regroup, Tom, by any means. But this is a conference, you talk about college baseball, track and field. This is the premier conference in all of college sports. We see more Olympians out of the SEC, more football players. Now we're seeing basketball
Mhm.
players. And I look at some of these lower seeded teams again, like for example, look at Arkansas with Coach Cal, with all that tournament success, they could be a dangerous team as a 10 seed. So Mizzou, for example, our Tigers, very explosive offense, really good guards, could get hot at any moment. I mean, you look at Florida have really good guards. Alabama have really good guards. Tennessee have really good guards. Auburn has really good guards. I know they have Broom, the big guy, but their next three leading scorers are all guards.
Mhm.
So what do all the SEC teams have in common? Well coached, experienced, a lot of guards, which means a lot of success in the tournament. So yeah, SEC is the conference to beat. No doubt about that. It's been a historic season for the SEC. And unlike the Big Ten, we had a few years back have a lot of issues. As a whole, the conference I do think is going to deliver. Someone's going to fall somewhere if there's 14 teams.
Of course,
Someone
yeah.
will get upset. Not all 14 teams are winning, their opening round game. But as a whole, as a conference, I think the SEC is going to thrive. I've got, you know, getting ahead of myself, but I'll go ahead and tease it. Multiple SEC Final Four teams. So look out for the SEC, the king of college athletics, Tom Castleman.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's not keep the people waiting too long, Common. I mean, we've got Final Four, and of course the title game to win it all. And this is, there's a little bit of bracket wisdom. This is the place to actually begin with your bracket because the championship winner is going to be the team that gives you the most points in your bracket pool. So you want to put the most amount of your time, your resources into researching who's going to be the best team. And I got to tell you, there are very there's a wide selection of good choices here. A lot of teams that are really, really strong. And I got to tell you, I feel good about probably three of my picks as I've been doing this initial bout
Same.
of
I feel the
research.
same way.
There's one where I'm feeling not quite so strong because some of the things that I look at, if you're not in the preseason top 25 and you're a top two seed, typically you're not really getting to or out of the Sweet 16. And of course, I initially was going, okay, maybe, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, but Michigan State was not ranked in the top 25 comment. They're a team that's maybe overperforming or outperforming what the wisdom of crowds would say their talent is. So if I'm going to start with the team in which I feel the least, or the bracket in which I feel the least amount of confidence, let's go bracket or region by region. For the South, for now, tentatively, I'll go with Auburn. Auburn does kind of worry me a little bit. They have a lot of talent, but they also foul a lot. They're outside the top 300 schools in the amount of fouls that they commit, and that can be problematic because if you're going up against a team that puts up, that has a good free throw percentage, that's a way that you're giving that other team, 3 points essentially. And foul trouble is also something that is going to be an issue in this tournament season where, it's a high pressure environment. You're outside of your conference tournament where even though that's still a tournament setting, you're playing against these schools a lot. So you have good scouting, you have a sense of familiarity with the teams against you're competing in this tournament. I mean, Auburn, have they faced, a Creighton, a Texas A&M, a UC San Diego? Like there are teams that are going to be along the way that could be a little bit dangerous, a little bit unfamiliar. And if you get yourself into foul trouble, if Johni Broome finds himself in foul trouble, if your guards are picking up fouls and all of a sudden you're going up against a press with your backup guard, there's a lot of variability there. So that's where I'm going to pick Auburn for now. But I feel that this is a spot in the bracket where there can really be a lot of upheaval because Michigan State could perhaps be an overrated 2 seed. Iowa State, I mentioned, with Keyshawn Gilbert being out, is I think a relatively weak 3 seed. Not overly impressed with Texas A&M. Their true shooting percentages outside the top 300 in the nation. So I don't really know who's coming out of this conference. This is one where if you wanted to say somebody like a preseason top 25 Marquette coming out, that'd certainly be off the wall. But this feels like a spot in the bracket where there could be a lot of red. So for now, I'm playing it safe and going with Auburn on this one. I think I'm probably going to stick with that. But there's just a lot of different ways this one can go.
Do you want to do this by region then?
Let's do region by region.
All
Who do
right,
you have out of
because
the South?
I'm gonna go like the same but different than you. I'll put it this way.
Okay.
The team I feel best about is Auburn. I absolutely love this team. I love Bruce Pearl. I've covered college hoops before, Tom, of any college basketball coach. I've covered enough Mizzou Auburn games on the sideline. I've never met a coach in the history of sports that yells as much as he does. He yells the whole game. He's yelling at his team. He's yelling at the opposing team. He's yelling at the ref. He's trying to pump up his guys. He loses his voice by the end of each game. I don't know how he doesn't lose it at halftime. He's had some recruiting issues, etc., which, that is a problem, but he is one of the best dang coaches in all of college basketball. He's going to have his team ready to play. He's going to use last year's, failure as a motivational tool.
Sure.
I definitely think, I talk about guards being key, but I also look at inside out. Like Johni Broome is probably going to be second in player of the year voting this year in college hoops. 19 and 11. He can score. He can rebound. He can post up. He can step outside or knock out a shot. But then they have Chad Baker Mazara who can shoot. There are 3 leading scorers besides Broome are all guards. They have tons of, depth. And they low-key have had a very interesting year where they've won a lot of high-scoring games, but they've also won a lot of lower-scoring games. If you look at some of the scores across their spreadsheet, it shows you they have ways to win games in multiple ways. I also think they fell off in the SEC tournament, but for most of the year, they were the number 1 team in the SEC. They were the number 1 overall ranking multiple parts of the year. And just the eye test from what I saw, it felt like they were the best team in the SEC, which is the best conference. They are battle tested. Yeah, okay, maybe they didn't play a smaller conference team, but they played enough close games. They played in enough tough environments. I really like Auburn out of the South. Probably of any team in the tournament, That's the team I feel the most confident about actually making the Final Four, Tom Castleman.
Interesting. So let's see who we're going to have matching up against the Auburn Tigers. And if your hint is anything of an indicator, I suspect that this is going to be very chalky, very similar for you and I,
Yes,
because I have the Florida Gators. I think that this is a bracket that lines up quite nicely for them. They get a potential matchup against the UConn Huskies, the twice now reigning champions, but
much,
this is
much different
a
UConn team
much
this year.
diminished UConn team that's going to have its hands full with a Porter Moser led Oklahoma Sooners team. This is one where I'm looking at, there's not really a lot of stiff competition here. St. John's is a 2 seed. That falls under the same category as Michigan State. We're not ranked in the preseason top 25, top 2 seed, or
Yeah, they do have
teams
Rick
that end up.
Pitino though.
They do have a great coach. They have a great defense,
Say
best
what you
in
will
the
about
nation.
him. He's an incredible basketball coach, Tom.
If I'm picking one coach for just an in-game, like who am I going with, pure tactician, it's going to be Rick Pitino. But St. John's, they fall into that same category of top 2 seed, but outside the top 25, and just historically, those teams have fallen short. So it's one of those ones where I think St. John's is going to hold down opposing teams, but they just might not be able to score enough. Adjusted efficiency rating of 65 in the nation on KenPom. So this is one where I could see Florida having a fairly straightforward path onto the tournament. I'm not overly impressed with Texas Tech. In fact, I kind of have a SEC matchup of Florida, Missouri as of right now. Let's see if that one holds with a
Ooh.
little bit of additional research there. But this is one where I feel pretty comfortable saying Florida, Auburn, a couple of 1 seeds, very, very chalky. 2 1 seeds coming out of the best conference in college basketball this year. But I mean, these are just very talented teams. It's very hard to find the pitfalls and the upsets against them. I mean, for crying out loud, I had to go to foul trouble for Auburn to try to find a bit
Sure.
of a red mark against them.
Yeah, look. I do think it's a little bit weaker region overall. The West too.
Hmm.
I mean, the West is a lot of like big name schools that are seated where they are, but they're not really the same programs. Like Kansas is a 7, UConn's an 8, but these teams are shadows of themselves. I'm also not necessarily pumped about Texas Tech at 3, Maryland at 4. I do think St. John's is intriguing because they have a really good defense, they have a really good coach. They'll be prepared in the NCAA tournament setting. But ultimately, Florida, I mean, Florida's playing the best basketball right now in the country. They've won 12 out of 13. They won 6 in a row, won the SEC title. I know that Tennessee made it interesting in certain points, but I caught a decent amount of that championship game. In and out. I had it on the whole time, but I was doing a few other things as well. But caught a decent amount of the game, and 2 words to describe Florida in that game: in control. They were in control. The game was never within a shadow of a doubt. I think in an NCAA tournament, especially like that opening weekend, like who's like less susceptible to an upset? Teams with a lot of balance. I look at teams that depth
Hmm.
balance because one guy might be cold, but then the other guys, someone will step up because Florida has 6 players that average 8 points or more. Again, a lot of guard play on Florida. Will Clayton Jr. is their leading scorer, but there's a lot of different guys that can deliver for them. If one guy is cold, someone else steps in. So I do like the Gators. Just something about Rick Pitino just has me just a little bit worried personally. But I will ultimately pick Florida as the 1 seed to also make the Final Four. That is 2 SEC teams down. Then we'll see if there's more. Do you want to go to the top region, Duke's region next, or
We'll
where do you
go
want to
up to the
head?
top and we'll go east with Duke, and it kind of begins and ends with Duke. I'd feel far, far more confident about this if Cooper Flag had not injured an ankle, but even so, the fact that there was no sign of extensive damage, it's just got to take some time for that swelling on the sprain to go down.
And they won the ACC tournament without him, by the way.
Without him,
Just I
yeah,
know the ACC was a
it's
weak year for the ACC, but they still
mhm.
won the conference tournament without Cooper Flag. Just to
It's still a
clarify.
really, really talented team, and it's a talented team that doesn't have an overly tough draw. Like You're not overly impressed with Arizona. I'm not really overly impressed with them or Oregon either. You look, down the south of the bracket. I mean, Alabama could be potential. I don't even know if Alabama gets there. I might be a little six seed heavy, but I think that Duke is just a really, really balanced team. I mean, looking at the KenPom ratings, third in adjusted offense, fourth in adjusted defense. Not a very lucky team, which means uh, they're not overly benefited by winning an outsized share of very very close games. Played a really strong non-conference schedule as well, 21st in the nation. So this is just a team that pretty much has it all. And John Scher has had certainly a few years of
Shire.
experience now, getting that underneath his belt. Coming in for Coach K, there's a little bit of the initial like, okay, what are his bona fides? How well is he going to do as a coach? He's got some experience with him now, so uh, he's got decent coaching, really great talent. It's Duke is like a really really easy pick, and I know it's boring. We've gone 3 1 seeds so far. I promise I'll make up for it later in the program, but I feel like Duke is just a really, really phenomenal team, and I have a suspicion that our good friend Jay Bill is a good friend of the show. You love his picks. You love his Twitter account. I'm sure that the former Blue Devil himself will be having this team taking down the Nets, but that's getting a little bit ahead of myself there, Common. Who
Look,
do you like coming out of
Tom,
these? Are you going Duke as well?
after extensive research, I can tell you, not every year, but on average, the last 10 years, I have had a better bracket than Jay Billis. These are just statistical facts, Tom Castleman, which, again, I've watched less college basketball this year than past years. Jay Billis has watched more college basketball than me. I'm sure he knows
For a
more,
lifetime, yes.
a lot more lifetime. But I'm just saying, I usually tend to outperform Jay Billis in these brackets. Just look, again, I don't want to toot my horn. Sorry, it's something I need to work out. I'm aware of that. But I'm telling you, the stats do not lie. Jay Billis versus Kamenechev, I have outperformed him on the bracket challenge. Now,
Text him and see if he wants to put a 20 spot to join our bracket pool.
right, let's see if he wants in.
Put his money where his mouth is.
I am gonna pick Duke. I am gonna pick Duke. I like John Shire a lot as a basketball
Mhm.
coach. I think that it's interesting to note that former Duke Blue Devil John Shire, he has that. I think he won a championship with Duke as well, and
Yep.
Coach K coached him. So he's well aware of, what it takes to win on this big stage. Cooper Flag is the best player in college basketball. Let's be honest, it's relatively weak year when it comes to superstars in college hoops, and we are seeing less and less superstars than we used to. Obviously, it's called the one and done. A lot of freshmen go to the NBA. We've had not many, but a few guys go the G League route. Not many, but a few guys go the foreign country route out of high school. Professional basketball, not college basketball. But gone are the days of the 3, 4 year seniors, the Tyler
Mhm.
Hansboroughs, the JJ Redicks, the Adam Morrisons. We don't really have that anymore. And outside of Cooper Flag, there really isn't a massive star in college hoops. I mean, Broom is great for Auburn. I think he could be, he's like an NBA role player. Cooper Flag is
Mhm.
the only like quote unquote semi sure thing we have in the NBA draft coming up. So I think he's going to give a star effort. He's going to be great. But I watched a little bit of the ACC tournament, just a little bit on Saturday night, and they had a freshman big guy that's come on of late in the ACC tournament. Some of these freshmen take a little bit longer. They have a big guy in Cooper Flag. I write it down. I don't want to butcher his name. He's got one of those hard names to pronounce. But their big man is really good. They have their next two leading scorers, by the way, Tom, besides Flag, guards. Would you guess? Guards in the NCAA tournament are massively important. So yeah, Duke's got a lot of talent. I saw something recently on the internet about their NIL budget or whatever, and it is like
Mhm.
crazy. So, they're putting it to good use with these players. But everyone likes to hate on Duke. I lean with my UNC tendencies, with my fanhood, like Michael Jordan, loved Tyler Hansbrough, Ty Lawson, that UNC team. in my late high school career. I think that's when they were at their peak, which is probably right when late high school and early college is right when I was like, I love college basketball, but back then, like,
Mm.
I had more time to put into it. College basketball was like right up there with any sport for me. There are so many memories of UNC basketball in the NCAA tournament. So I'm not inclined to cheer for Duke being a UNC guy, but I think the proof is in the pudding. You saw what they did this year. They lost 3 games the whole year, Tom. The whole year they lost 3 games. It's a really, really
Mhm.
good basketball team. I agree with you. Duke is going to make my championship. This, again, kind of boring. But the one team to look out for is the 2 seed Alabama. Again,
Mhm.
they made a run last year in the NCAA tournament. They have Sears, one of the best players in the country, a very streaky guy as well. But if he's hot streaky, any given day, this guy could pour up 30, 40 points and knock you off in an Elite Eight game, no problem. But I'll go with the Duke Blue Devils as well, Tom. I am also going to go on the other region. I'll let you start first, but I'm
Mhm.
not going to have 4 1 seeds. I'll put it that way. I'm not that boring. I do have a
Yeah,
non-one seed out of the other region.
yeah, and I do as well. And this one comment, I'm not sure how safe and secure your seat is, but you might want to buckle up for this one.
Uh-oh,
Uh,
hold on. Can I
this is,
guess?
if you'd like to.
Are you going to go with Illinois
No, I am going with the Gonzaga Bulldogs.
as an
I'm
eight
picking
seed?
an 8 seed. This is a team that
Okay.
has a lot of things to like about them. I mean, they're a very, very balanced team. You have several guys that are at or, by a fraction of a point shy of 10 points per game. But you want to talk about guard play. Ryan Nembhard has been phenomenal for them. He's almost averaging a double-double on points and assists. He's at 9.8 assists per game. You've got Khalif Battle coming from
They have a big guy too.
Arkansas, I believe. Yeah, and Graham Ike, I believe. And this is a team that if we're looking at, you've got good guard play, you've got some good depth in the front court as well to kind of withstand some of that foul trouble. And then how do you like these numbers, Common? For Khalif Battle and Nolan Hickman, two of their guards, free throw percentage of 92.9, 92.3%
I like
from the
that.
line. Ryan Nembhard, 76.5% from the line. You want to talk about 3-point percentage? Khalif Battle shooting, a third of his threes are going in. Hickman is hitting 43.6% of his threes. Nemrut's hitting 39.3% of his. So this is a team that has good guard play, can score from the perimeter with
Can they
Graham
play
Ike.
defense? That's the question.
They're not the best team at playing defense, but in the bracket draw that they have, their 1 seed is Houston, which is a good, efficient offensive team, but plays at a really,
Slow.
really slow tempo. And then
Mhm.
you have Tennessee as well, which again is more defense than offense and also plays at a slow tempo. So if you have Gonzaga, who plays at the 46 fastest pace, according to KenPom, you've got a team that maybe can get up and down the floor, put in some points on these guys. And then if you want me to throw in, again, one of my favorite stats, luck, if you will, that I look at, Gonzaga 341st in the country in luck. That means that in all of these close games, I believe they had 8 games in which the scoring margin was 6 points or fewer. 0-8 in those games. I believe Gonzaga has one of the
Which is
best point differentials in the nation.
which
So,
is weird given their free throw percentage. I actually caught
yeah.
some of the Gonzaga game this week. I tried to
Hmm.
watch as much as I can yesterday, and today didn't get a chance to watch as much as I wanted, but I tried to watch a decent amount of these games, flip through, read about some stuff, and that I heard that stat, and that's what they were saying. They're like, well, they're really good at free throws, but they don't win close games, which is kind of
Hmm.
an oddity in itself. You know what? I like
Yeah.
Gonzaga enough to beat Georgia, but not to beat Houston. I'll leave it at that. But I like the upset,
Yeah.
Tom.
No, I mean I think it's a really good pick. Like I'm looking through their wins. So it was an 8 point margin of loss to West Virginia. I believe all other games were within let's see, Oregon State, that was another one. So it looks like then they were 0-6. So two of their losses were outside of a close score. And it was just
Sure.
it's a team that, if we're going to talk regression to the mean, that's a positive regression to the mean in close
Sure.
scoring games. So I think that's one that for me going to slot them in as that last Final Four seed. And it's a big name. Again, it's not chalk from a seed perspective, but Gonzaga is a team that has been good for a very, very long time. Or I should say Gonzaga. We have this conversation every single year. It's Gonzaga.
It's
So
Gonzaga, I think, right?
it is Gonzaga. Yeah, I just
Okay.
that's the Midwestern in me.
All
So
right.
I'm going to go Bulldogs on this one, Kyle. How you like that for a not one seed going
I,
chalk all
I
around?
like that. I'm going a lot more conservative with a
Sure,
2 seed in Tennessee.
it's
I
a good
think
one.
Tennessee was a Zach Edey brilliant performance away from last year making the Final Four anyway. I know Dalton
Mm-hmm.
Connect is off to the NBA with the Lakers, but a lot of the guys around him are back from that team, including Zakai Ziegler, one of the best point guards in the country, more than 7 assists a game. Very, very good point guard. It makes it easier when you have a point guard that can run the show, man. That dude can absolutely do that. I think Barnes is an awesome coach. Well coached team again. Chaz Lanier, really good scorer for Tennessee. They also really good defense. They could score, but they really play defense. And I think for teams that have not seen you in a tournament setting, defense does help. I think they have a little bit more firepower than Houston, which is why if those teams do meet up, I like Tennessee better. Just again, a feeling with Houston. They've had really good teams a bunch of years in a row, but we don't really see them kind of break through the last few years and make that actual championship or Final Four consistently. So, you know, let's see. The 2 seed is, 2 seed is Tennessee. Kentucky's a 3 seed. They're a very interesting team. UCLA, a big power team. Usually a powerhouse is the 7, could make some noise, but I think they do lose to Tennessee. I do like the Tennessee Volunteers making the Final Four. Defense, senior, junior leadership with their
Mm-hmm.
point guard Ziegler does go a long way for Tennessee.
All right, so we've got a mostly similar Final Four as you and I both have Auburn, Florida, Duke, and then we
I
we we beg to differ on that last region
I
there
know what
coming
you're
out of the
picking. You're gonna
Midwest.
pick Duke over Florida in the championship game.
Ooh, you are very, very good. That is my initial first blush
Yes,
championship
I
pick. I
know you,
mean,
Tom Castleman.
yeah, these are the top two teams on Ken Palm, so that right there makes them darlings in my heart.
Where's
And
Auburn on Ken Palm?
Auburn is fourth.
Okay.
But to be fair, Ken Palm's not the
No, I
alpha
know
and the
it's not.
omega
I'm
for
just
me. I mean,
curious.
Houston is third on Ken Palm, and I've got number 9
Okay.
Gonzaga over them. But that's one of those things where it's like, okay, where can there be a close enough a differentiation that there could be some value picking one team over the other? I mean, Duke is just so good, so talented throughout, and it's not often that we see great players that go on to the NBA. So, for example, like a Kevin Durant, for example, phenomenal all-time great NBA player, couldn't get Texas out of the first round when he had his lone year. You look at some other team or some other players, rather, you look at, say, a Derrick Rose, who was the number one overall draft pick, took Memphis all the way to the championship game.
They had a really,
Unfortunately
I'm
for
blanking on
them,
the guy's name, but there was a veteran guy who was really good on that team. Like D Rose, I think was the
it
second leading scorer
was
on that team. Douglas
was it?
Roberts or something. That could be
Yes,
wrong.
no, that's a great pull. That's
Is it
Douglas
Douglas
Roberts. I'm
Roberts?
blanking on his first name, but yeah, I
But he
remember
was
his
like really
tattoos.
good.
He
Like
was.
really good college player. So like that makes it a
Mhm.
little bit easier when you have a guy like that to kind of take that load off your
Yeah,
shoulders type deal for these young
yeah,
freshmen.
and in hindsight, as a Bulls fan, it's absolutely heart wrenching that Derrick Rose didn't hit those free throws for Memphis to win as a eventual Mizzou alum. You know,
Coach Cal,
Kansas winning, not a great thing, but let me
Commerce.
tell you, sophomore high school Thomas Castleman splitting the pot with the Kansas winning it all because I tied because if Memphis had won, somebody else would have won the March Madness bracket. But
Mm.
I got an envelope in it was a second period Spanish class with half the winning. So
Wow.
that's
I'm
a
so
fond
proud of
memory.
you, Tom Castleman. So proud.
But I mean, this is Cooper Flag is going to be the number one overall draft pick, and I mean, like you said, I mean, he's talented all around. I'm looking at Duke's stats on ESPN right now. Leader in points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. It's all Cooper Flag, And
Told you
when
there's
you
a little
look
bit of
at
everything,
a
man.
little bit of everything, shoots almost 50% from the field, 83 from the line, which is a really, really good indicator of future success at the NBA level. Shoots almost 37% from three. He's just a really well-rounded, outstanding player at the collegiate level. And like we said, there's plenty of talent around him as well. With is it Kneepel? I'm not sure.
The other
Uh,
guard.
the other guy, you got Tyrese Proctor. My apologies
Proctor
to
is
him.
good too.
You know, oh, we have a Cayman on this Duke team. Oh, you might be picking them to win it all as well. So, I mean, Duke is
Almost.
just very, very talented all around. So that's why I'm going with the Blue Devils. It's a very, very blue blood pick. But I think that, Duke and Florida for a championship, that would be a very, very fun game to watch.
Yeah, we're close, but not exactly. So I
Hmm.
have Duke and Auburn in my championship game.
Okay.
I also couldn't agree more about Cooper Flag. The guy is awesome. The depth of Duke. Love John Shire as a coach. I also love Auburn's depth. You mentioned Cooper Flag, likely the number one pick, likely Wooden Award winner. Well,
Hmm.
Broom is the number two guy on that Wooden
Yep.
Award list. Chad Baker Mazzara got to control his emotions. A very emotional guy, could get some tech problems, etc. But he's a really good player. Bruce Pearl's an excellent coach. Definitely really, really like what Auburn is doing. A little bit worried about Florida. I think so. I'm picking Auburn to win the whole darn thing because Auburn has more depth to me than
Ooh,
Duke.
sure.
They have more ways to win. I think they can win close. They can win big. They can win high scoring, low scoring. I think they have a better overall team than Duke at the college level. Duke could obviously have better pro prospects. Broom's a classic example of just a really, really good college player. Is he going to be an NBA star? Maybe not, but he's an incredible college player. Auburn also, like, they have a lot of guys on their team that are like transfers or guys that were maybe 3 or 4 star recruits. They play with the chip on their shoulder, and I kind of like that feeling, which I think is kind of how Bruce Pearl is. Because I think, in my
Hmm.
opinion, just pure coaching ability, Bruce Pearl is a tier one, top five coach in college basketball type coach. But I think because of those recruiting violations, he was great at Tennessee. Great coach at Tennessee. Then he got the violations. Then it kind of like took him a little while to get the right job, get in the right setting. And now we're seeing what he can do as a basketball coach. What's the term? Like blacklisted. Like Calvin Sampson.
Yes.
Same thing at
Hmm.
Houston. You kind of blacklist a coach who has some sort of like, unless your name is Bill Self, you're fine. No one comes after you. But that's one Mizzou fan opening up other doors that we're not here to make any accusations. I plead the fifth. I
But
take back. If I had a dump button, I
didn't
would use
Kansas
it,
have
Tom.
sanctions?
What's up?
Didn't Kansas have sanctions? Or no, were those
Supposedly.
self-imposed sanctions?
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Supposedly something that if
By
or
the
the
way,
other.
Con Newpel. Just I was doing a
Canuble.
little listen. Just Newpel.
Yeah. So
There we go.
anyway, though, Tom, I'm gonna go with Auburn, and I mentioned to you
Yeah.
off air. Again, I haven't watched as much college hoops as I typically do, but when I have really tried to watch college hoops, the two teams that have always been on TV for me has been, and I've really tried to watch Duke more than anybody because of knowing who Cooper Flag is, but I always seem to catch Auburn and I always seem to catch Duke. And with
Hmm.
the exception of the SEC semifinal, pretty much every time I watched Auburn, I was blown away. I mean, this team was really good. It's kind of like one of those where if you watch it, you see it, you can tell they look like the best team in the country to
Hmm.
me. I do think Florida's going to be a tough team. I think there's 3 teams that I think are the 3 that I struggled with the most. You know, Duke, Florida, and Auburn. I think any one of those 3 teams could win the championship, in my opinion. Because again, Florida, same thing. A lot of good guard play. Really, really good team. A lot of depth. I mean, all 3 of these teams, my top 3 teams, they all have tons of depth,
Yeah.
which really helps because, if one guy goes down like a Cooper Flag, you still win the ACC tournament. And it kind of wears you out. And the deeper you go in this tournament, the more fresh you are, the less you ask of your superstar players. Maybe if they're blowouts, these Florida guys can get some rest. The Auburn guys, the Duke guys, they could be well rested. And I think they have like good inside out combos. I definitely like Auburn, their leading scorer is kind of a bigger guy. Cooper Flag is not traditionally a big man. He could, dribble, drive, but still
Mm.
kind of a big man, more of a big man than a guard necessarily.
Yeah, he's
And
6'9", yeah.
those two teams, their best scorer is the big man, but their next two or three best scorers are their guards. So they have the inside out combo. They can beat you by pounding the rock inside, or they can beat you by knocking down the threes. Well coached, Bruce Pearl, John Shire, well coached teams for sure. Tennessee with Rick Barnes in my Final Four. Again,
Mhm.
Ziegler, a great point guard, well coached. But I do think Auburn squeaks past Florida. Duke beats Tennessee. We get the Auburn Duke matchup, and ultimately, SEC has been the best conference all year. I'm an SEC fan. Mizzou Tiger,
There you go.
baby. SEC, SEC. It just means more. Auburn Tigers win the whole dang thing. National champion Auburn Tigers to you.
Yeah, well, Common, I gotta tell you, this is going to be such a fun time of year, phenomenal tournament to watch in as much entirety as we can. We start at 11 o'clock Central Time on Thursday this week, and it's just wall to
Mizzou plays
wall
on
games.
Thursday.
Oh, the schedule's been released and everything. Well, I haven't even actually
I
looked
thought
at
I
the
thought they
times
released
and
yeah,
days.
no, the schedule is released, Tom.
Nice.
Mizzou plays 6:35 on Thursday.
All right. Well, I will definitely be home from work by that point, so I get to
I'll
get
be
the
at
alma
work
mater.
stressing.
Well, you can have like a little side window, something like that. I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure that's going to be a top topic of conversation for you at your job. For me, not so much. But
That's okay.
such is life. Such is life. So yeah, this is going to be, again, I'm just so excited for all these games to catch as
Same.
much of the action as I can, Common. So this has been phenomenal. I'm glad we were able to carve out some time here to do the show because this is really probably one of the most fun shows we get to do of the year, certainly.
100%. And we can go look back and see how wrong we were, right? All right.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. Because
Yeah,
it's funny if we're wrong by a lot, then we look smart if we're right by a lot. Or if we're in the middle, we're like, it's March Madness. You get some, you miss some. So
exactly.
it's one of those where I get a little bit less upset if I miss the March Madness picks rather than the NFL picks, etc. Because it is, as it says, madness time. So
Hmm.
appreciate you taking the time to do the show. We'll talk off here about potential other shows, but we'll try to
Sure.
check it at some point during the tournament. Get you guys some sort of update at some point, some sort of recap as best we can. But for everyone watching at home, enjoy the madness, enjoy all the fun. Looking forward to an awesome March Madness tournament. Tom, looking forward to awesome shows ahead. Appreciate you taking the
Hmm.
time, and we'll see you guys when we see you. I'll put it that way. When we see you. Have a good one.